Every night, Adaeze went to sleep married and woke up feeling like a stranger had borrowed her life. That was the sentence that would later save her sanity. But on this night, she didn't know it yet. She was known throughout Enugu as a woman with gentle laughter and eyes that carried hope. She married Kunal because he spoke softly, prayed loudly, and promised forever. Everyone told her she was lucky, a fortunate woman to have found such a man. And she believed them. How could she not? The trouble started quietly, almost invisibly. It began with a drink before bed. A single tablet, he said, was just for stress. Kunal would smile, his voice a comforting balm, and say, "You work too hard, my love. Just rest." And she would drift into a deep, dreamless darkness, trusting the man she called husband. But her mornings always felt wrong. Her body was heavy, as if it had run a marathon while she slept. Her memory was a puzzle with missing pieces, returning only in confusing fragments. Voices that weren't Kunal's, hollow laughter that didn't belong in their home, and shadows that flickered at the edge of her mind, too fast to name. When she voiced her confusion, when she asked questions about the lost hours, Kunal would dismiss her concerns with a gentle touch and a soft smile. "Bad dreams, my love," he'd say. "You imagine too much." And she tried so hard to believe him, because believing was so much easier than facing the fear that was starting to bloom in her chest. But the house itself seemed to remember what her mind refused to hold. The air felt heavy. The nights felt watched. A cold draft would follow her down the hallway. Adaeze's own spirit, a part of her she thought was long asleep, began to whisper that something wasn't just wrong. It was terribly, fundamentally broken. That night, as she held the tablet in her palm once more, her heart screamed a silent warning. If you sleep tonight, you may lose yourself forever. Marriage had once felt like coming home. Now it felt like a cold, empty stage where Adaeze played the role of the happy wife. Her real self, her soul, was hiding backstage, trembling in the dark. Kunal became distant and withdrawn during the day, only to become strangely and intensely attentive by night. He watched her drink her evening tea. He watched her swallow her tablet. And then he would sit there and watch her fall into that unnaturally deep sleep. His friends visited often, men who laughed too loudly and stayed far too late into the night. Kunal called them his brothers, his business partners. But to Adaeze, they were just a source of deep, gnawing discomfort, a feeling she couldn't quite explain. She started noticing things that didn't add up. Doors she never locked were suddenly bolted from the inside. The faint scent of perfumes she never wore lingered on her bedsheets in the morning. And then there were the bruises, small, dark marks on her arms and legs that she couldn't explain, that had no memory attached to them. Her own body was telling a story, a terrifying story that her mouth was too afraid to speak aloud. Desperate, she confided in her mother, hoping for guidance. But Mama Nkuru just sighed, her face etched with a lifetime of weary acceptance. "Marriage is endurance, my child," she said. "Just pray more." So Adaeze prayed. She prayed until her knees ached and her voice was raw. But prayer without truth, prayer without action, started to feel like it was suffocating her. Something deep inside her was screaming for release, even if her lips remained silent, sealed by fear and duty. And then one morning, everything changed. She woke up, her hand clutching a torn piece of a bracelet, a cheap, gaudy thing she had never seen before in her life. It wasn't hers. The bracelet became her enemy. It sat on her bedside table, a silent accusation, daring her to remember the night she had lost. It was a tangible piece of evidence in a crime she couldn't recall. That evening, Adaeze made a decision. She palmed it, and when Kunal wasn't looking, she let it fall under the bed. Fear was a cold fire in her veins, keeping her wide awake. But a flicker of courage, a desperate need for truth, held her body perfectly still. She lay there, feigning sleep, her breathing even, her eyes shut tight. Through her heavy eyelids, she heard the front door open and close. She heard voices. Kunal's voice was there, but it was different, cold, sharp, and businesslike. Another man laughed, a sound that chilled her to the bone. She didn't move a muscle. Her heart was beating like a war drum, a frantic rhythm calling warriors to battle inside her chest. Though her body felt weak and heavy from the pretense, her mind was sharp, awake, and listening. It stayed awake just long enough to hear the words, to understand the unthinkable, to piece together the horrifying truth. The man she loved, The man who prayed loudly and promised forever had been selling her silence. He had been letting other men into their home, into her bed, while she was lost in a drugged darkness. Hot tears rolled down her temples and into her ears as she lay there, praying without words, a silent, desperate plea to a God she wasn't sure was listening anymore. This was the ultimate betrayal, a monstrosity wearing the familiar, loving face of her husband. And when the first light of morning finally broke through the curtains, Adaeze knew one thing with absolute, chilling certainty. Survival had just become her only assignment. The woman who went to sleep was gone. In her place was a fighter, awakened by the truth. Fear didn't kill Adaeze. It woke her up. She started small, hiding little things, a recording on her phone, a scribbled note with a date, a photo of a bruise. This collection of secrets became her lifeline, her evidence, her prayer. On the surface, nothing changed. She played the part of the happy, grateful wife. She would smile, she would cook his favorite meals, and she would thank her husband, Cunnel, for his so-called care. But behind the performance, a quiet revolution was brewing. Each night, she'd lock the bathroom door, her hands trembling as she tipped the tablets he gave her into the sink. She'd watch the water wash them away, and with them, the fog that had clouded her mind for so long. Slowly, her strength started to seep back into her bones. And with that strength came a new feeling, one she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years: rage. It wasn't loud or explosive. It was a quiet, focused, unstoppable fire building within her. She knew she couldn't do this alone. She thought of an old friend, Zainab. Zainab had walked this path before. She had escaped a violent past and now dedicated her life to helping others do the same, working with a women's support group. Adaeze picked up the phone, her heart pounding. For the first time, she spoke the truth out loud, every ugly, painful detail. She braced herself for the world to shatter, but it didn't. The truth did not kill her. It set the first stone of her path to freedom. Zainab listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't question, didn't judge. When Adaeze finally fell silent, her friend's voice was calm and firm. "You are not weak, Adaeze," she said. "You are targeted." Those words were a revelation. It wasn't a flaw in her. It was a war being waged against her. Together, they began to plan. Zainab taught her that escaping wasn't just about running away. It was a strategy, a chess game where every move had to be calculated. The first move was to turn the house against its master. Adaeze installed a tiny, hidden camera, a silent witness in the corner of the living room. Each night, after Cunnel was asleep, she would retrieve the footage, the house finally telling the secrets it had been forced to keep. Watching the recordings was agonizing. It was like seeing her own heart break on a screen, night after night. But for every tear that fell, her spine grew a little straighter, a little stronger. This evidence was heavy, but it was also her armor. Cunnel wasn't oblivious. He sensed the shift in her, the new light in her eyes that wasn't just fear. Her newfound clarity looked like defiance to him. So he tightened his grip, his affectionate words turning into accusations, his love curdling into suspicion. He tried to pull her back into the darkness, but it was too late. Destiny had already switched sides. The house that had once swallowed her silence was now ready to testify on her behalf. The night arrived, the one Cunnel had been planning for. He thought it would be his greatest triumph, his final act of control. He didn't know it would be the night his entire world collapsed. Earlier that day, Adaeze had called him, her voice weak, pretending to be ill. She told him she was staying at her mother's. But she wasn't at her mother's. She was walking into a police station, evidence in hand, her voice trembling but steady as she told her story one more time. When the officers arrived at the house, they found Cunnel not alone, but with associates, caught in the middle of a criminal transaction he thought was secret. His confident smirk shattered like glass. His partners ran, but Cunnel froze, caught in the headlights of justice. For the first time, Adaeze saw him as he truly was: powerless. It was a strange, hollow victory. Justice, it turned out, had finally learned her name. But freedom wasn't a burst of fireworks and instant joy. It was just pain without the lies. It was quiet and raw. The community, once their shared world, became a minefield of whispers. Some blamed her. Why did she stay so long? Some doubted her. He seemed like such a nice man. The gossip was a constant hum, a painful reminder that escaping the house didn't mean escaping judgment. But the law, for once, spoke louder than gossip. The evidence was undeniable. The day she had to testify was the hardest of her life. She stood in that courtroom, her voice a fragile tremor at first. But with every word she spoke, every truth she laid bare, her voice grew stronger. She told them everything. The tablets, the isolation, the fear. She cried on the stand, but she did not break. She refused to break. Perhaps the most difficult moment was when her own mother came to her, tears streaming down her face, and apologized. Her mother's silence, born of tradition and fear, had nearly cost Adaeze her life. In that moment, Adaeze understood a profound lesson. The truth can be a lonely path to walk. It can isolate you and force you to stand alone against the tide. But it is also the most powerful force in the universe. It is the only thing that can truly set you free. Healing was a slow, painful crawl. The nights were the worst, haunted by nightmares that felt all too real, lingering like shadows long after sunrise. But even in the deepest darkness, a tiny spark of light began to flicker. Adaeze found a new purpose, a mission born from her own suffering. She started helping other women, women who, like her, had been silenced by their pain. She helped them find the words, the courage to speak their truth. It was in their shared stories that she began to find her own strength. With this newfound resolve, she made a decision that would change everything. She returned to school, picking up the pieces of the dreams she thought had been shattered forever. The books, the lectures, the late-night study sessions, they weren't just about a degree anymore. They were about reclaiming her life, her future, her very identity. The scars she carried, both visible and invisible, stopped being marks of shame. They transformed into testimonies, powerful proof of her resilience. They told a story not of a victim, but of a fighter who had survived the battle. Her understanding of love shifted profoundly. It was no longer about blind trust or losing herself in another person. It was about safety, about feeling secure in her own skin, with or without someone by her side. This was a foundation she was building for herself, stone by sturdy stone. And perhaps the most difficult part of this reconstruction was learning to forgive. Not the one who had hurt her, but herself. She had to forgive herself for not knowing, for not leaving sooner, for the misplaced trust. She had to release the weight of self-blame that she had carried for so long. And as she let go, a profound sense of peace settled over her, a quiet calm she hadn't felt in years. She was finally, truly, coming home to herself. Years passed. The woman who once felt lost and broken now stood confidently before a crowded room. The audience was filled with women, their faces a mix of hope, curiosity, and shared experience. Adaeze's voice was calm as she began to speak, but her eyes held a fierce, unwavering fire. She told her story, not with the trembling voice of a victim, but with the steady strength of a survivor. She spoke of the darkness, but she focused on the light she had fought her way back to. Somewhere in that sea of faces, a young woman sat listening intently. Every word Adaeze spoke resonated deep within her soul. She recognized her own silence, her own fear, her own pain in the story being told. And in that moment, watching the powerful woman on the stage, she made a choice. She decided she would not stay silent any longer. She would not let fear write the final chapter of her story. That single decision, made in the quiet of her own heart, was Adaeze's true victory. It was more meaningful than any personal achievement. Her pain had not been an end point. It had become a catalyst, redirecting her life toward a purpose greater than she could have ever imagined. But just when she thought the past was finally behind her, it found a way to speak one last time. It arrived on a Tuesday, an ordinary day. A single envelope in her mailbox, plain and white, with no return address. Her heart gave a slight jolt, a muscle memory of old fear. With steady hands, she opened it. Inside, a single sheet of paper held just 3 words, written in a familiar hand. I am sorry. A younger Adaeze would have crumbled. She would have dissected the words, searching for sincerity, for remorse, for a sign that her pain had been acknowledged. But the woman she was now simply smiled. The smile wasn't for the apology. It wasn't because of the words on the page. It was a smile of liberation. She smiled because she realized, with absolute certainty, that she no longer needed it. She no longer needed his validation, his remorse, or his permission to heal. Her healing was her own. She had earned it. That evening, she took the letter outside. Under the vast, starry sky, she lit a match and held it to the corner of the paper. She watched as the words curled, blackened, and turned to ash, rising on a gentle breeze and disappearing into the night. The night no longer held the memory of her trauma. It was just the night. It no longer owned her. She owned her future. If you're listening to this and Adaeze's story resonates with you, if you see yourself or someone you love in her experience, please hear this. You are not weak, and you are not alone. What you are experiencing is not your fault, and you do not deserve it. Help is available, and it's okay to ask for it. Reaching out is an act of incredible strength. You can connect with the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Their number is on the screen right now. They offer free, confidential support, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't have to give your name. You can just talk to someone who will listen without judgment and help you explore your options safely. Speaking your truth is the first, powerful step toward breaking the cycle. Whether it's to a hotline, a trusted friend, a family member, or a therapist, letting someone in can make all the difference. You deserve to feel safe. You deserve to be respected. You deserve a life free from fear. Thank you so much for listening today, for holding space for this important conversation. If this video helped you or you think it could help someone else, please consider sharing it. Don't forget to subscribe for more content that matters. Take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you in the next one.